run from it. Destiny arrives all the same. Day number 2 of the 2019 Reebok CrossFit Games about to get kicked off here in Madison, Wisconsin at the Alliant Energy Center. Thank you so much for being with us again today, everybody. I'm Sean Woodland. Annie Sakamoto is here. Dan Bailey is here. It's going to be a fantastic day of competition. We have 2 events in the books for the individuals, 3 down for the teams. Before we jump into day number 2, let's go back to day number 1 really fast. What's the biggest lesson that we learned?
I think we learned that the test separated the elite from the really good. So the people that we wanted to see move on, the people that we expected to see move on did, right? Yeah. So we didn't lose a whole lot of big names. There was a couple athletes who had qualified to the games through the old process, through regionals, that are not going to be continuing on their weekend. But overall, I think the test did what they were supposed to do, and we're going to see the best competitors head on to today, Saturday, and Sunday.
Right, we were talking last night, and we were saying how yesterday's 2 events almost felt like a full weekend of regionals events in its test of fitness and its ability to kind of separate those that really should be moving on.
Here's what we know so far about what is on tap for day number 2. First, though, the overall standings for the women. We'll get to the schedule. Let's get to the schedule before we get to the overall standings. We are off and running here on day 2, everybody. Starting at 10 a.m., team event number 4, it's the Team Ruck. Now, those details have been announced. Then the individuals will have a Ruck event. That will be at the North Park. That has been announced as well. We don't know the rest of the details as far as what's going on for the rest of the day, at least what the competitions are, but we do have times. We're going to call all the final heats, but that's a general overview about what's going on. Let's take a general overview now of the women's competition and where we stand after 2 events. A little bit of a surprise as far as who sits on top of the overall leaderboard. It's Carrie Pierce with 194 points. She has a 12-point lead over Annie Thorisdottir. Tia Toomey and Kristen Holta are 16 points back. And then Haley Adams sits there in 6th place. So before we get any farther here, I want to play a little game I called What's the Biggest Surprise? Our first contestant from Santa Cruz, California is Annie Sakamoto. What's the bigger surprise? Carrie Pierce in 1st, Tia Toomey in 3rd, or Haley Adams in 6th?
Haley Adams.
Well done with the buzzer. I like that.
Haley Adams in 6, Sean
Okay,
Woodland.
that's a good answer.
All right.
Why?
Now I need to explain myself. Well, I'm going to say that Haley Adams, she is the youngest competitor out on the floor of the individuals this year. And it's so incredible to me that she has gone from being the only teen athlete that has moved directly into the individual athlete competition. There's 2 more athletes that are here this weekend that have competed in the teen division, that being Guillermo Malheros, who was 2nd place in 2017, and George Sterner, who was 2nd place in 2016. But both of those gentlemen had a year or 2 off before they could actually enter individual competition. So for Haley Adams, not only to go directly from that team to the individual division, but also to be sitting among the top 10 women in the world currently, very impressive.
Good answer. I'll award you, let's say, 100 points for that one. All right, our next contestant, he's from Uniontown, Ohio. He hangs drywall. His name's Dan Bailey. Bigger surprise, Sam Briggs in 22nd, or Sarah Sigmundsdottir in 26th.
You're going to have to choose option B there.
Okay.
Sarah Sigmundsdottir in 26th. Definitely not what we expected to see from Sarah. We had a lot of big expectations from her coming into the weekend. Event 1 potentially had 3 to 5 no reps on the rope climb. So there's nothing in that event that really stuck out to me that, boy, this is really going to trip Sarah up. But she finished 40th, which was not very common for her. The fatigue on missing those rope climbs is devastating, and making up those reps. In event 2, ended up in 17th place in the handstand walk in 2016, 230-foot handstand walk. She placed 18th, so it's not her strongest movement there either. So 2 events kind of out of the way, hopefully for her, where some bumps and some tough spots in the road are kind of gone. So hopefully she will march up the leaderboard as we continue through the weekend.
Well done. 100 points to you as well, Dan Bailey. All right, bonus question. You can take this one if you would like. Who has the better chance among those two to move up the leaderboard here on day number 2?
I'm going to go with Sam Briggs.
Okay.
So I think this is an athlete that mentally she is less affected from the bumps in the road, from having a poor finish on an event, or even being not where she wants to be on the leaderboard this early on in the competition. And then besides that, we've seen 2 of her weaker movements in the moderately heavy snatch and the handstand walk already come out of the hopper. So that bodes really well for Sam. Now what bodes even better for Sam is individual event 3, which is a long endurance event with a rucksack.
Right.
I bet Sam could beat
pitch.
And I bet Sam could beat half the gentlemen in the field.
That's probably
even
gonna
at the
happen.
gentlemen's
That's going to
weight.
happen.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah, and they are using the same weights. So that you want to talk about just an equal test.
So if
Be
we're
interesting to
talking
see.
about a perfect setup for Sam to move up the leaderboard, this is it.
Okay, let's look at Danielle Brandon, who sits in 7th place overall right now. She won event number 2, not someone we're very familiar with, but anytime you show up in the top 10 after day number 1, we got to start paying attention to you. Now the question is she for real?
That's a phenomenal question, Sean, that is very difficult to answer at this point, because about all we know is that she finished 16th in the Open. That's what got her here. We do also know, though, that she has qualified for regionals under the old system before. So it's not like she hasn't had the talent to get there. She hasn't technically been proven like a lot of the other athletes are. Has a gymnastics background, has been in college pole vaulting before, which brings a lot of skills. She can bring a lot of skills to the table that make her successful this weekend. What we need to find out is, were the first 2 events just playing to her wheelhouse?
Right.
Or does she really, the well-rounded athlete that we want to see continue on to Sunday at the CrossFit Games?
Yeah, I got to give a shout out to her. I mean, she lives in Sacramento. That's my hometown, 916. So personally, I hope she stays there. We do know a lot about Annie Thorstadter. We might not know a lot about Danielle Brandon, but we do know a ton about Annie Thorstadter, former 2-time champion. Right now she sits in 2nd place. And experience matters at the CrossFit Games, and Annie Thorstadter obviously has tons of it, and she knows exactly what she needs to do to not only stay motivated, but also competitive here at the CrossFit Games.
I make sure that I make the right decisions in training throughout the year, and that's where the work is put in. And now I get to enjoy it. I get to show what I'm capable of doing. So the most important thing for me when I'm competing is making sure that I do everything that I can when I walk out to the floor. I don't want to have to walk out of an event and feel like I left something in a bank and made mistakes. I feel like that's the most important thing to me.
You both have competed at the CrossFit Games. You both have experience on this stage. What are the most important things that you need to kind of keep in mind as you move through the competition so you don't get distracted?
Well, I think Annie has the knowledge and the experience to know that there's going to be some up and downs throughout the weekend, right? You're going to do really well. It's easy to get really excited about that. And then you're going to have an event that you kind of bomb out or don't do as well as you hope to. And the goal is to actually not get too excited, not get too upset, and just see how steady you can be, because in the end, it's everything all together and what happens on that at the very end of everything.
Okay, let's go over now to the women's side. The men's side of things, where there aren't as many surprises in the top 10 as there are in the women's. There are a few, but no shock. All right, Matt Fraser's great. He's won the first 2 events, perfect 200 points. He's your leader. Scott Panchik, he sits in 2nd. James Newberry's in 3rd. He is one of 3 of Michele Letendre's athletes for the men who are in the top 10, and 4 of Michele Letendre's athletes, Laura Horvath being the other, are all in the top 10. Pat Vellner and then Sam Cornier sitting in 7th. They are all under the expert tutelage of Michele Letendre. Michele has done a great job getting her athletes prepared. It's showing after 2 events, and she spoke with Chase Ingram earlier this morning.
Morning, guys. I'm here with Michele Letendre, owner of DECA CrossFit, multiple games athlete, competitor, and now coach for DECA Comp Programming. First day of competition is done. What are your overall thoughts on the first 2 events and how they did their job as separating the field?
I actually really liked yesterday. I thought it was well planned, I was nervous about the equipment and the amount of people on the field. Like, as a coach, you don't want someone to be out of a competition because of an accident. But I really liked it. Knowing what we know now, I think for the women's competition, I would have changed a couple of things on that first event. But I really think it did a good job. I think it allowed people to be on the field doing multiple things, doing CrossFit, which is rare, right? In the first day of CrossFit Games, usually it's like off-site, running, swimming, and they had a chance to do some CrossFit stuff before. So I thought it was a great day, well organized. Overall, I think it was a good, yeah.
You're a coach now,
Yep.
switching roles starting as of last year. Your most notable athletes off the bat, Pat Vellner, Laura Horvath, but those are not the only athletes you have competing here, and they are sitting pretty after the first day.
Yeah, so DECA Comp banner had 7 athletes. We had 3 national champions, Alessia Joy from Switzerland. We had Gabor Tarak from Hungary. We also had Sanj, we call her Sanj. She's the Indian national champ. She lives in Canada but is Indian. So those 3 they had a great first day, they had fun. And then I have James Newbury, who's sitting pretty well, and obviously, and Sam Cournoyer, who's a guy from our gym. He's homegrown, and yeah, they're all doing great, having a good time.
So 2 events down. We just got the 3rd event to start day number 2 with that 6,000 meter ruck. Yeah. You were talking to me earlier about, James Newbury is not only doing well, but you like how this event shakes up for him.
James loves this kind of stuff. Like, James loves to run, and he's really good at odd objects. So I really think this is a good event for him. Obviously, we don't know, like, the competition's not done yet, but if anyone can do really well in that event is James. Pat can do really well too. Laura can do really well. I think Sam's not the happiest, but I think he might surprise himself because we've been working a lot on that. So I like the event. We'll see how it shakes out,
The one change this year, we've seen it in the past, but different in the last few years, is the cuts.
Yeah.
How do you manage the mindset and emotions with your athletes with this new format here at the CrossFit Games?
I guess I'm really lucky. I have athletes that are very good under pressure, and they take right decisions, and they don't let that, guide them. Sam is the guy probably I was the most worried about because he's completely new. He's a rookie. But he has 3 veterans with him that are kind of showing him how to act and how to be. So I wasn't really worried. It's not something that we talked about. I think that now, as we move on forward, it's going to be a little bit more of an issue, and the idea will be just to focus on the task and not the cut. If you look, like, when you compete, you want to think about the little things. So that's going to be my job. But they have to ride it. Like, Sam has to ride the roller coaster. He's going to learn from it. So I can't take that away from him. I can guide him. But I'm not worried for them. They have a good head on their shoulders, and they're smart people, so I think it's going to be good.
All right. Well, one event coming up. We don't know what's next. We're riding the roller coaster along with you. But Michele, thank you very much, and good luck to you and your athletes.
Thank you so much, guys. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Chase, and thanks to Michele Letendre for taking the time to stop by to talk to us. Michele Letendre was a fantastic athlete, and a lot of times great athletes don't make great coaches. She is clearly the exception to that rule. What makes her such a good coach?
I think one of the things is, you mentioned that she was an athlete, but I think she was coaching before she actually became an athlete, right? So that was the intended career path initially. She got into being an athlete, and then can continue to share that knowledge that she's gained from being an athlete with others to have a successful CrossFit Games experience.
Yeah, and I've had the pleasure and the honor to compete against Michele at the CrossFit Games, and I have to say that while she is a fierce competitor, she is also a very gracious competitor. She's very humble, and it makes me so excited to see a female coach, especially with such a kind of a group of very competitive athletes, because we don't see a lot of female coaches at this level. So I'm just really proud and happy to see somebody like Michele out there.
So James Newbury right now sits in 3rd. Michele mentioned him. He's never finished better than 18th at the CrossFit Games. So clearly, it is early, but Michele has made a difference with him. Why could this be the year that he has his best career finish?
Well, when you take a look at his finishes, you say he's never finished better than 18th, but the 2 finishes before that were 24th and 26th. So he is kind of marching up the leaderboard as the years go on. She mentioned he loves to run. He's got a stated 5K time of 18:44. It's going to play into the Ruck. I expect him to do very well there. Also has some strong Olympic lifting numbers, which I'm sure played into event 1 for him with those moderate to heavy snatches. Traditionally wasn't the best handstand walker in the past, but ended up 4th in event 2. That tells me that Michele has him working on his weaknesses, doing the things that are necessary to get him towards the top of the leaderboard.
James Newbury's off to a great start. Ben Smith is off to a phenomenal start. We sat here at this time yesterday saying, what can we expect from a guy who's coming off an injury and didn't qualify through the Open and didn't qualify through any sanctioned events, got here through a wild card. I think he's exceeding expectations right now.
For sure. I mean, he had his best day ever in CrossFit Games competition, and that includes 2015 when he won the CrossFit Games. So the fact that he got 8th place on the first event and 5th place on the second event, coming off the heels of injury, like you said, and just having a baby, so not sleeping very much, is highly impressive. But what impressed me the most about Ben yesterday really was that 8th place finish in that first event, considering that he was in a heat where nobody could really push him. He had nobody to gauge his effort against as far as his pace went, right? Am I going out too hot? Am I a little too slow? So to pull an 8th place being in the very first heat on that very first event was highly impressive.
Yeah, we mentioned Danielle Brandon as the woman that maybe we need to start paying attention to on the women's side. On the men's side, it's Samuel Cornier, one of Michele Letendre's athletes. Same question, is he for real?
Yet another great question, Sean, because we don't have a lot of information on him. He's a young athlete, he's only 23. The thing that I like, he took a 10th and a 13th yesterday, which makes him appear to be very consistent, right? He qualified through the Open in 2018. He was 11th at regionals, so not a bad athlete there. Very strong lifter, listed 305 snatch and 370-pound clean and jerk. So it appears this guy's pretty well-rounded, but again, like Danielle, we need to see more from him. We need to see how he can kind of round out his weekend and where he fits in on that leaderboard.
Yeah, right now Samuel Cornier is in the top 10. Chandler Smith was in the top 10 after one event yesterday. He sat in second place overall. And the big thing with Chandler has been figuring out whether or not he belongs at the CrossFit Games. Now, right now, he is outside of the top 10. He is in 18th place, but he has confidence, and he understands what it takes for him to get back into the top 10.
Okay, so at Rogue, I think before that I had some serious doubts about my ability to be competitive with the best guys in the sport. And overall, like sport of CrossFit, right, there's a lot of domains that are tested. I know there's still some that I have some pretty big holes in, but I also got a lot of confidence in the things that I can do and that I can do some of those things really well. So that was lesson number one, but the more important lesson was more like the mental side of the house, like learning that if I'm approaching things with positivity, my performances are going to be more consistent and I'm actually going to have fun, which I don't think I'd had like fun in doing a sport maybe since like middle school. Like it'd been a hot minute. So that was a really enjoyable experience, and then trying to replicate that means that even though today it had some ups and downs, like I've been pretty level and I'm still having a really good time. So that was the biggest lesson for me.
Chandler Smith to me is kind of like that superhero who's been blessed with these powers and is now just understanding how to use them and just starting to scratch the surface of his full potential.
Right, in 2016 he actually took 9th at the Atlantic Regional. He had a few events there where he was right there with some of the bigger names that we knew in the sport. So it was this guy who was kind of coming onto the scene. Okay, maybe this is going to be his shot. The next couple years, we're going to see him in the games. He had a setback while actually working on a tank, right? So he's a member of our armed forces.
That's legitimate.
That's pretty legitimate. Most people are like, oh, I kind of was working out in a gym and I got hurt. And no, I was working out in a tank. So that took him out of competition for a little bit, but he's able to rebound. He looks incredible this year so far. Like we mentioned before, event 2, we might have got his weakest movement out of the way, which is a handstand walk. Did well on event 1 with some running involved. We got the Ruck coming up. I'm sure he's very familiar with that, so I'm excited to see how he's going to do.
Right, I mean, I was just so impressed with the confidence that he attacked that first workout. To see him kind of, you saw him as he was passing Pat Vellner, and he didn't have that look of like, oh God, should I be doing this? Right. It was like, eat my dust, buddy, here we go. And I really like that. And then again, I don't think we've seen his best movements come out yet. So if he can keep that confidence, even after not as great of a finish on event 2, and attack the movements that he is good at, he's got a great chance this weekend.
You mentioned movements that favor an athlete. I think you could probably say the same thing about Brent Fikowski, that we haven't seen what he's good at yet. Right now, Fikowski is in 14th place overall. He has 2 finishes outside of the top 10, a 19th in event number 1, a 17th in event number 2. And remember, that was almost a 3rd place overall. What do you think's going through his mind right now as he gets ready for day number 2?
Well, again, I think like we've been talking about, I hope that Brent is a veteran enough athlete that he knows that this is all a part of competition, that he's still well within reach of making that final day, and that he really just needs to put together a good day 2. He had some funny little slip-ups yesterday, and if Brent is the athlete that we know him to be, he's going to shake that off and he's going to move into day 2. This is a great first event for him as well, right? Yeah. A nice long run for Brent should bode well for him.
Yeah, I mean, he's had a few yo-yo performances in the past, so he's used to kind of going up, going down. I'm sure, like you said, this event coming up is something that he's got his eyes on to move himself back up the leaderboard.
Yeah, and we know Brett Bukowski has plenty of home run potential. Remember, he set the rookie record for event wins in 2016 when he won 4 events, and wins later are much more valuable than wins earlier here at the 2019 Reebok CrossFit Games. Let's go to the team division because they're going to kick things off here on day number 2. Not as jam-packed on top of the overall leaderboard as the individual divisions. Mayhem Freedom has a 63-point lead over CrossFit Krypton after Mayhem Freedom went out and won 2 of the first 3 events. And then the Central Beasts are the only other team above 200 points. Look, Mayhem Freedom is good. There were some questions about them because the last time we saw them in a field this deep, that was at the Rogue Invitational. They didn't win this event, but as we said yesterday, you put them on this stage, they just know how to perform.
Right, so yesterday I made a comment about OC3 Black being the only team to beat Mayhem Freedom, and I'm just going to pivot off that comment. I'm going to just a slight right turn. I'm going to keep my comment, but I'm going to say that I think actually losing to OC3 Black at the Rogue Invitational may have been one of the best things that happened to Mayhem Freedom coming into this weekend, in that they are obviously here with a vengeance, and they want to prove that they are the best team and the team to beat. It wasn't surprising what they did on event 1 and event 2, winning both of those events, but what should be worrisome to the other teams on the floor right now is how they did in event 3 in the heavy barbell event, and to think that they got 3rd place against the teams that they were up against in that event should be, like I said, very worrisome for those other teams.
Dan, you've trained with them, you spent a lot of time in Cookeville. What is a typical day of training for that team like?
Wake up, train, eat, train, sleep, repeat. Okay. That's pretty much it.
All right, but but they're always on the same page. How much when they practice, they work on things like communication and organization, or is it just, hey, we're just gonna go throw weights around and get more fit?
No, they're constantly working on teamwork, communication. They are the best team, in my opinion, with the Worm, which is one of the most team-oriented things that they have out on the field. They train relentlessly with that thing, and then you have a guy who's been there 4 times before, who's won the individual games 4 times before, and has all the other affiliate championships behind him leading the way. So he's no stranger to what needs to be done, and he knows where he needs to get his team come game time.
CrossFit Krypton, they're loaded with a bunch of individual games veterans as well. They currently sit in 2nd place. What are their chances of maybe narrowing that gap here on day number 2?
I think they're actually really good. I had a chance to catch up with a couple of their team members, and the first event they were really worried about. They actually thought that they weren't going to do very well there. They're not the biggest team out on the field. They don't have as much weight to kind of put behind the salt bike and the big bob. You see them pushing it there, but they were still able to take 3rd and rack up a whole lot of points. So they were super stoked on that. Moving into a 7th in the 2nd workout, and then another 3rd on the 3rd workout, where actually again they didn't expect to do so well on the clean and jerk. Some of their athletes, they said they didn't expect to be as strong as they were, expected to finish in the bottom half, and still gathered a lot of points.
We are still at 14 teams. We are eventually going to cut this thing down to 11, and that changes how the points are distributed. With a 63-point lead right now, and knowing that wins are more valuable as you move through the competition, what are the odds that Mayhem Freedom can run away with this thing?
I think very, very good. At this point, I think very good.
I think very good, but I think they have to fight against some new rules again. So the fact that teams can make a jump on the final day, I think we had talked about before. Let's say Mayhem takes a 4th, another team takes a 1st. That can almost narrow the margin by somewhere between, I believe it's 40 to 70 points, somewhere in there. I don't have the exact stat, but that's huge, right? Before, where you're taking a 4th to a 1st, you're only losing about 12 points. 10 points, we're going to quadruple that on Sunday when people are fatigued, they're more likely to make mistakes, they're more likely to have a slip up. So I think it's going to keep things exciting all the way through Sunday.
We do know what event 4 for the teams is going to be. It was just announced. It's a team ruck run, and all 4 athletes will be competing at the same time. It's a 6,000 meter ruck run. They start with ruck packs on them, so 20 pounds for the men, and then it is 15 pounds for the women. Now, after each lap, they have 2 7-pound bags and 2 10-pound bags that they need to add, but they can distribute them however they want. And that's going to be pretty interesting, because logic would say, okay, well, the women get the 7-pounders, the men get the 10-pounders, and then we just go from there. But that may not necessarily be the case. Strategy is going to be big in this event.
Yeah, I think so, and I think, like you said, it's going to come down to who's your slowest runner, and then how are you going to stack those bags as you approach each lap.
What do you think the keys are?
I think the key is honestly, 6 months ago, you need to be real good at running. If you're not good at running now, there is nothing you can do about it.
Right.
So survive.
Yeah, and they need to hold on to a 10-foot rope as they go through this event. So, maybe just get behind your slowest person and just
stand behind the slowest person and just start running.
And push.
All right, let's, other than Mayhem, because obviously we're always watching them, who's a team that you think might do well here in this event?
Well, I'm going to tell you a team that I don't think is going to actually do well.
Okay. You can answer your own question, Annie.
I'm going to go ahead and ask a different question, Sean.
I don't like your question. I'll
I wanted
answer
to
mine.
talk about Invictus just because, they got second to last on that first event. And then they did what they needed to do. They picked it up on event 2. They got 6th place. And not surprisingly, they won the lifting event, right? With Lauren Fisher and Reagan Huckabee, Tommy Venus, and Ross Smith. It's not surprising at all that they won the lifting event. But take all of those same athletes, put a rucksack on them, and ask them to run 6,000 meters. And I don't think this is going to be a great event for them. So what they need to do is damage control on this event. I think they have to really think about how they're going to approach this, and they're going to have to push to a dark place that a lot of them might not want to go to.
What about you? Who are you going to be watching for this event? Good or bad? I'll amend the question so you can answer what you want to talk about.
I'm going to have to go with OC3. I think that they are still a hungry team. They want that title, and they know that what they did yesterday is not what needs to be done if they're going to get up onto that podium, if they're going to get back into the hunt. Not only that, if they're going to make sure that they survive above a cut line. So kind of the pressure's on right now. I honestly don't know a whole lot of their experience with running events. We're going to see it today, but I guarantee that they're fired up today and ready to come compete.
You both had experience with this ruck pack at the Rogue Invitational, and this is something that we've never seen before. We've had weighted vests, but what's the difference between you putting that ruck pack on and then wearing a weighted vest that a lot of these athletes have practiced with before?
I'll actually say that I thought the ruck was a bit more comfortable than the weight vest, to be honest with you. But it is hard. I when we did our rope climbs and then we went off on that run, I was like, am I really running? Are my feet really actually leaving the ground, or is this just a shuffle? It was tough for me.
There are a couple things that you can do to kind of mitigate the problems you might have from it afterwards. So how you actually cinch down the ruck, it was explained to us, you really want that bag high on your back. You don't want it anywhere near your lower back. They have 6K to go. That's a pretty far distance, and it's something that could cause some kind of rubbing down on your lower back. That's happened to me before when training with it. So any little thing that they can do like that to preserve themselves for the rest of the weekend is going to be a good tip.
Yesterday we asked you guys to send in your questions for Dan Bailey. We still want you to send those in. We're going to get to some of those now. So it's hashtag Ask Dan Bailey. Our first question comes from David Jones. Can anyone challenge Tia Toomey?
After yesterday, I think the easy answer is yes.
Okay.
I mean, she's not currently in first. She absolutely dominated the field in event 1, but like I mentioned probably at the start of our broadcast, I think the women's field is way more competitive in terms of somebody being able to dethrone her. She has to, trying to complete a 3rd championship in a row is incredibly difficult. She's the one with the target walking around on her back. So there's a handful of ladies in the field that I definitely think can do it.
All right, David, thank you so much for that question. Next question is about Sarah Sigmund's daughter. It's from Patrick Anderson. Something isn't right with Sarah. Anyone know what's going on or what the deal is, or just a bad day?
I think we're going to chalk that one up for just a bad day.
All right.
If it's true about some of the no reps, maybe a miscommunication with the judge, that's something that you can't really help, that you just have to handle in the moment and try to fix the best that you can. We know that handstand walking isn't her best movement out of everything that she does. That showed up yesterday too. She's still surviving the cuts, still making her way up the leaderboard. I think I had an interview with her yesterday, actually. She was super positive. She still had a big smile on her face. And so I think she's ready to compete for the rest of the weekend.
Keep those questions coming. Use the hashtag on social media. Ask Dan Bailey. There's a lot of good stuff going on here on site that Rogue is involved in. Of course, this great Rogue tent, you're going to want to stop by if you're here and check out all the cool stuff that they have. You can come hang out with us. Another thing that they have off-site, they're involved downtown in one of the restaurants, the Great Dane. You can go check them out. They're at Great Dane Pub. They're in Madison, Wisconsin. And it's now through Sunday. All 4 Great Dane Pub locations have daily drink specials, custom Rogue food, exclusive Rogue and Great Dane t-shirts and pint cups. So go check them out. Any Great Dane location, if you're here in Madison, it's at Great Dane Pub if you want to find them on social media. For more information, you can also follow Rogue Fitness on Instagram. The teams are getting set to kick things off. We're going to roll right in to event number 4 for them. It is the Team Go Ruck. All 4 members working at the same time, 6,000 meters. And this one's going to be long, it's going to be grueling, and again, they have to add weight as they complete each lap. You have 2 7-pound bags and 2 10-pound bags that they have to add to their packs however they would like. Let's head out now to the CrossFit World feed and join them as we get set for event number 4 with the teams Go Ruck. Still 14 teams are in the field as we take a lovely aerial look at Madison, Wisconsin. And the course here, it's a 1,500 meter course that they have to navigate around. It's throughout the campus here. It's a shot of the beautiful Capitol building here, and there is the field where the teams will be starting.
And I think it's important to note, Sean, that not only is it a 1,500 meter course, there's some ups, there's some downs, and they'll be hanging onto a 10-foot rope, I believe, that none of the teammates can let go of.
That's what I'm actually curious to see. What happens if somebody drops the rope?
Right.
Highly unlikely, I think. It's a very simple skill to happen, but if they drop the rope or something, is there a penalty? Is there something that they have to do to kind of counteract that?
10 burpees over the rope.
That would be enough. That would do it. That would make me very unhappy.
Yeah. With those Ruck packs. North Park at the Alliant Energy Center. It's team event 4. The Team Ruck. 14 teams still in the field. We don't know when they're going to make the cut, but we are going to cut down soon, you have to assume, to 11 teams.
And I think when you think about, the temperature yesterday, it got really hot out there. We saw a lot of the individual athletes on that second event wearing gloves on their hands because obviously that turf is getting really hot. These teams are lucky they're going early in the morning. It'll be a different game for the individuals as it gets later on in the day.
Just saw a look at your top 10 teams across the Mayhem Freedom on top of the overall leaderboard. And there is the event description. 6,000 meter ruck run. Women begin with 15 pounds, the men begin with 20 pounds, and then after every lap they have to add that weight, and then again they have that 10-foot rope. You can see them holding on to it there. They have to hold on to that during the whole run. I mean, this one, it's just pretty simple. There's really not a whole lot of strategy here.
Pretty simple. The only other thing that it will help to have had some experience maybe with running with a rope or running holding an object, just because the spacing, you want to know where to do that. You don't want to trip up on somebody's feet in front of you or possibly take off their shoe or something like that by stepping on their heel, some silly mistake that could cost you really big. But other than that, like you mentioned, pretty simple, just run. And
where the strategy comes in, though, is how you're going to distribute that weight. And we said this earlier, the simple answer is that the men get the heavier bags, the women get the lighter ones, and then you go ahead. What I'm going to be interested to see is if anybody decides to maybe change that and give maybe their stronger runner more weight and their weaker runner less.
Exactly.
CrossFit Mayhem Freedom, they are wearing the white leaders jerseys.
10 seconds.
It will be easy to pick out in that crowd as we get set to start event number 4, Team Ruck. We are underway.
And here we go, folks.
The other thing to note is hanging onto that rope means you only have the use of one arm when you're running. And I don't know if you gentlemen have ever run with a stroller. I'm going to guess not. But it is, you think, you have the use of wheels, but running without your arms or even just one arm can make running significantly harder.
Running is already significantly hard for me, so you take away one of my arms and it just becomes downright impossible. The 1.5 kilometer, sorry, the 1.5 kilometer loop, or meter loop, 1.5 thousand, 1,500 I should say, meter loop, will begin and end in the North Park, and that's where they will add the weight.
Look like JST out front early, Invictus in there somewhere, and there's Mayhem coming up on the side.
And this is a perfect example of an event where really you're not going to win this on the first lap.
No, sir, you're not.
No, but it can pay benefit to kind of get out of the crowd a little bit. That might be part of your strategy. Hey, let's get out in front and kind of command the lead. Don't have to worry about bumping into anybody.
And JST definitely has some space where you see a lot of these other teams are still just kind of bunched up right now.
Mayhem Freedom in those white jerseys are towards the back there, but again, this is the opening lap, the opening meters of the opening lap here, and what is a going to be a long event as Team JST Compete. They are out front earlier here, and look, this is a team that you talk about, you got to have a plan, but you might have to deviate from it. They have to start deviating from the plan. They're in 13th overall right now. They are beneath the cut line. They have 111 points. They trail Pro 1 Montreal by 21 points. So they have some work to do if they want to get themselves inside the top 11 and avoid that first cut.
You can see that right now, definitely coming out in this event with some urgency, getting out front. I'm pretty interested to see, okay, I can kind of see there that the course opens up a little bit. It looked like it was pretty tight. That might become a factor towards the end of the race. If you're trying to pass somebody, there's 2 or 3 teams in front of you and you can't get around, might not have an option. So again, coming out front could pay a benefit later in the laps.
And I believe there's a 40-minute cap on this workout, which means you have to average a 10-minute mile. Doesn't sound that fast.
No, but when you're right.
But put some weight on your back and a rope in your hand, and holding a 10-minute mile is going to be tough, I think.
Yeah, and adding weight as you go through is certainly going to make a difference. And we're approaching the 3-minute mark here in the opening stages of Team Event 4, the Ruck Run. And it's JST Compete. They just left the right side of your screen. They are in the lead. OC3 is on the right of your screen, and then Invictus X in the green. Sam Dancer's in that headband.
And it looks like Invictus, Team Invictus right behind them.
And that's a team you talked about just because it's, and as a member of the over 200-pound athlete club,
right.
We don't like us some running.
No. So. Give me back my heavy barbell,
yes.
Please.
Put me on a rower and leave me alone.
Can I modify this workout with a row?
I don't think there are any scaling options to this one.
Call in my substitution.
Invictus X, they're slightly ahead now of, that's OC3 in the red, and then Invictus, they are in the dark shirts.
Looking to make a move on their own other team, the other Invictus team there.
This is the pack that's competing for second is JST Compete. That's the lead that they have. JST Compete, the team of Jack Hornthwaite, Stephen Fawcett, Helena Collins, and Jane Eady. They are out front. Each lap, 1,500 meters. And they will complete 4. And again, they begin and end in the North Park. And then once they get back in, they have 2 10-pound bags and 2 7-pound bags that they need to add to their packs, but they can distribute them however they like.
Sitting in the middle of the pack right there is Mayhem Freedom.
Don't stop, they're on the right, they just left the right of your screen. There's Mayhem Freedom in the overall white leaders jerseys. Project X. Con Porter and Brandon Swan leading the way for them. They were in the green. JST Compete now working their way on the back half of this run as they lead the pack.
And they have a significant lead, I would say, over the rest of that pack right now. But again, like you said, you're not going to win it on this first 1,500 meters.
Invictus X, OC3, and then Invictus. Don't Stop is there. And CrossFit Krypton, they're in the dark shirts, the bottom left of your screen. Vondel Gym, Pro 1. Mayhem Freedom coming in, there's Project X. But JST Compete again coming in 13th place overall. Right now, below the first cut line. So they have some work to do. We don't know when that cut is coming, but we are reducing the team field from 14 down to 11, and now JST Compete, the first team's back into the North Park, and now they have to add weight to their rucks.
This can also be a place where you can lose some time if you didn't communicate on who's gonna pick up the weight, how you're gonna do it. Making sure you have a good transition time, similar to something like a triathlon. You're just changing your shoes.
Right.
You don't think it's a very big deal, but you can lose some costly
fumble.
seconds. Yeah.
Yep. JST already has their packs back on, it looks like.
And JST Compete has added their weight, and they will exit the North Park first. Mayhem Freedom coming in, a little confusion. It looked like to where they needed to go. CrossFit Krypton is Camille Blanc-Bazinet is helping load some packs. Cody Mooney giving assist now to Camille Blanc-Bazinet, and Alex Smith was helping out Jessica Griffith. And now Invictus is done. They're on their way out.
Mayhem.
Yeah, Mayhem's trying to get things sorted. They came in, went left, and they went right, and they went left again. So JST Compete, great transition for them, and they are out now on their second of 4 laps around this 1,500-meter course. Here comes Project X, Con Porter.
Dragging one of their girls along.
Based on how everybody was running around, or how Mayhem might have been running around there, it looks like it might have been first come, first serve.
Right.
Yeah.
Wherever you go in, first weight set you get to, load your packs.
That is Project X in the green. Brandon Swan, Con Porta, Jessica Coughlin, and Harriet Roberts. CrossFit Bondel Gym in the red behind them, and CrossFit Mayhem Freedom. They were able to get things figured out, and they are on their second of 4 laps, approaching the 8-minute mark. And people may just be joining us watching this event, and we talked about this earlier, but the two of you at the Rogue Invitational, as part of the Legends competition, were able to compete in an event with this pack on. How is this different than a weighted vest?
So just where the weight sits, I mean, honestly, there's things that make it more difficult. There's things that make it a little bit easier. For me, it's a little bit easier to breathe with the rucksack on. You don't have anything hanging over the front of you. At the same time, the way the weight sits off your back, any little shift in that weight throws you left, right, it bounces up and down, and that can be a cause of discomfort or just something you might not be used to and have to adjust to while you're running.
And I think, like you were saying, Dan, you know, when you think about the duration that these athletes are going to have the weight distributed only on their back, that can, besides chafing and other things that can happen with the backpack, that can get really taxing on the back half of your body. And so the recovery piece will be really interesting for these athletes because, again, you're not just doing one pack for 1 mile, it gets heavier and heavier through each mile.
Mm-hmm. This is the second of 4 laps. 1,500 meters on the course. It's a 6,000 meter course in total when they're done running. It is a Vondel Gym right now ahead of Mayhem Freedom. There's an opportunity here in this event for teams chasing Mayhem Freedom right now to possibly pick up some points, assuming that they stay where they are here in the pack. They have a 63-point lead right now over CrossFit Krypton after 3 events.
And you know, with JST, besides them just having a nice open area to run through and not being bottlenecked, we saw the difference on the transition there when they added the weight. There was nobody around them, there was no confusion. They were able to get the weight in their packs, the rope back in their hands, and pretty much out back on the course, while the other teams were kind of fumbling around with their weight.
One more possible benefit of maybe coming out a little bit hot on the first lap.
Yep.
Invictus X is in the green, OC3 in the red, just left to left of your screen. They're in the pack for second place. That is the team that leads. That's JST Compete. They basically led at the beginning of the first lap, and they have managed to hold on to it here in lap number 2. It's the team of Jack Cornthwaite, Stephen Fawcett, Helena Collins, and Jane Eady. They have that 10-foot rope that they have to hold on to the whole time while they're running. Pretty sizable lead here for JST Compete. Invictus X behind them in second place, followed by OC3 Black. So the good news for OC3 Black is that they're ahead of Mayhem Freedom right now.
Right.
So opportunity here for some of these teams to pick up points and move themselves up the leaderboard. It's Invictus X, OC3, and then Invictus behind them. Invictus X in second, OC3 in third, and then Invictus in fourth, as there are 3 Invictus teams here competing in this event. Invictus Boston is the other one, and we have yet to see them here, as it looks like they've fallen back in the pack. They and the Central Beasts were 2 of the slower teams on that first lap. And not surprising when you considering the male athletes, especially on Invictus Boston. You know, Craig Kenny and Tolamoro Aquino, they are guys who love barbells, probably don't like running as much.
Large humans.
Well,
yes.
Which makes where Invictus lies right now even that much more impressive, like we were talking about earlier.
Invictus X, Sam Dancer, Margot Alvarez, Holden Rethwill, and Christy Aramo. OC3 after them, and it's Invictus. CrossFit Krypton. Good news for them as well, as they are in second place, and they are well ahead right now of Mayhem Freedom, so looking to carve into that 63-point lead that Mayhem Freedom brought into this event. Great day one for Mayhem Freedom as they won 2 of the first 3 events. Vondel Jim in the red. The Mayhem Freedom in the white overall leaders jerseys. Closing meters here of lap number 2. And once again, they will have to stop in the North Park and add 2 more 10-pound bags and 2 more 7-pound bags to their rucks. And they started with 20 pounds for the men, 15 pounds for the women. Team JST Compete, they are still your leaders.
About to enter North Park again, and it looks to me like their lead is just growing over the rest of the pack right now.
Definitely starting to see some separation groups within this heat where you have to wonder, are places going to get nailed down before the event's even over?
Exactly.
You're going to be looking at 100-meter, 200-meter leads for
which
some
are
events.
just too big to
Too big to overcome.
And JST Compete, they are back inside the North Park. And if you think back to 2017, the JST won the Run, Swim, Run event. That was a 6-person team, and they had to run in pairs. So they have some experience doing this.
And I think 3 of those team members are back on this team right now. So it bodes well for them. Again, like we were saying earlier, nobody's around. They get a clear, easy path to their bags.
Right back out.
Nobody's even back in the North Park yet.
JST Compete has already made their second transition, and now they are on the second half of this event as they start their 3rd of 4 laps around this 1,500-meter course. Invictus X coming in, OC3 as well. And now adding weight.
Team JST built upon their lead there from around 17 seconds on lap 1. Now they've almost doubled it into a little over 30 seconds after lap 2.
This would be a huge win for JST if they can hang on here. Now Invictus X, they just left the left side of your screen. And here comes OC3 Black. As Team Don't Stop in the red, they just entered.
Here goes Krypton.
CrossFit Krypton is out. Invictus, they're done. This is like a NASCAR pit stop. Rich Froning and company of Mayhem Freedom once again just trying to figure out where they're going to get situated. JST Compete, meanwhile, they are literally running away with us.
It actually did look like between Invictus and Krypton, Invictus came into the stadium first, but it looked like Krypton actually left first, so they had some kind of strategy. They were putting the weights in the bag, a better transition that put them ahead.
And that's again where we mentioned the top. Look, not a lot of strategy this event, except this part. This is where having a plan and knowing exactly what you're going to do comes in extremely handy, especially during in a tight pack.
Exactly.
Past the halfway point. 2 laps down, 2 to go. Mayhem Freedom, Dre Strom, China Cho, Tasia Persevich, and Rich Froning trying to gain ground on that team. JST Compete, they have been your leaders from the beginning here. Once again, they came in 13th place overall. That is currently below the cut line. So a win for them would probably put them safely inside the top 10. Jack Cornthwaite and Stephen Fawcett sharing some water. Jane Eady and Helena Collins, the other 2 members of that team.
They still look really comfortable running too. Nobody on that team looks labored at all.
Here comes Project X. They are in the green. Behind them is OC3. They are in the red.
And Invictus directly behind them.
So basically the same order that we've seen throughout this event, but only that JST is widening the gap. That pack for second seems pretty much intact where it was on the first lap. This is the third of 4 laps here, 1,500 meters around the course. JST taking a look to their right. They can see the teams chasing them, and they know that they have a sizable lead. Team Don't Stop, they lead Rich Froning and company. And Mayhem Freedom, after that last transition, they sat in 9th place in this event. So
looks like they're going to make a pass right now.
That's Team Don't Stop that they're moving past. And we saw this in the opening event with Mayhem Freedom. They got faster as it went on, but that's going to be hard here. You know, fatigue adding weight as well to those packs.
And when you talk about separation of 20, 30 seconds in a second lap, when you're almost about halfway through of a 6K run, that's a huge, huge distance to make up.
It is.
JST Compete, they are cruising right now as we have about 18 minutes gone by in event number 4, Ruck. They started with 20 pounds for the men, 15 pounds for the women in those rucks. They have since added 2 10-pound bags and 2 7-pound bags to that, however they've wanted. So potentially for the men, their packs have doubled in weight. About the same for the women as well, if they're evenly distributing that weight. We'll look at Invictus X's. Team JST is putting the finishing touches on lap number 3.
They've opened up a good size margin on the rest of the field. I would be really surprised to see anybody catch them at this point.
Well, Invictus X, they sit solidly in 2nd place in this event, and they're in 10th right now. So this will certainly give them some breathing room. Again, we're cutting down to 11 teams. You don't know exactly when, but you got to think it's coming soon, and they are trying to get themselves inside of that cut line. OC3, meanwhile, is behind them. They're in 3rd. OC3 comes in tied for 8th place with the Exterminators. So OC3 looking to put a little distance between themselves and the Exterminators, and that is Mayhem Freedom. They have a 63-point lead over CrossFit Krypton. And CrossFit Krypton, at the end of lap number 2, we're a couple spots ahead of Mayhem Freedom. So CrossFit Krypton looking to cut into that lead. And there is CrossFit Krypton. Mayhem Freedom. 2 firsts and a second yesterday.
Not a bad first day.
Not at all.
No.
If this holds and CrossFit Krypton finishes 5th, it'd pick up 72 points. Mayhem Freedom right now is back in 9th. They would pick up 44, so that's a 28-point pickup for CrossFit Krypton. So they would almost cut that deficit in half if things stay the way they are. But here comes JST Compete. They are in the lead. They're staring at 100 points as they get set to load their packs for the final time and start their 4th and final trip around this 1,500-meter course.
And like you were saying, Sean, Team JST Compete really needed this first place finish, assuming that that's what they pick up here. Sitting in 13th place, staring in the face of cuts. This is a crucial performance for them.
First 3 events, they finished outside the top 10 in every one of them, a 10th, 11th, and a 13th. JST Compete, Cornthwaite on the right, Fawcett on the left. They're loading their rucks and getting them back into position to start lap 4. Here comes Invictus X. They're in 2nd place. So that's how much of a lead that JST has right now in this event. And they are done, and Team JST Compete back out for their final lap. Invictus X now just getting back into the stadium, followed by OC3 Black.
I'm really impressed with Invictus X right now. So we know both Aramo and Margot Alvarez are good runners, but to see Sam Dancer doing so well, he's another 200-plus pound athlete, somebody that would much rather have a barbell right now than a rucksack for a run. Very impressive that they're sitting in second place.
Invictus X loading up their bags.
OC3 and Invictus also re-entered North Park.
Here comes Mayhem. So they're going to lose some ground here if this order stays the way it is right now. They're still probably going to have the overall lead, but that deficit that they had, that lead that they had over CrossFit Krypton, and they are now on the left side of your screen, CrossFit Krypton, that's going to shrink. And CrossFit Krypton is now just getting to their sandbags. So they have already loaded their bags? I can't tell if they're...
No,
I think they're just
still
getting
haven't.
there.
They just got in.
The Central Beasts, they currently are in third place overall. They're about 42 points clear of Invictus, who sits in fourth. So things are going to be shaken up here on top of the overall leaderboard as China Cho loads Dre Strom's bag and Tasia Persevich loads up Mayhem Freedom's bag. So this is big now as Mayhem Freedom, if they can get out of the stadium here before CrossFit Krypton, they can avoid losing any points, at least to the team that's right behind them in the overall standings.
Yeah, from about 5th to 7th, we've got CrossFit Krypton, Pro 1, and Mayhem Freedom. But there's only about 7 seconds that are separating them on laps. That is...
Yep.
They just exited right in front of Krypton.
But CrossFit Krypton is right behind them. So that is huge for Mayhem Freedom as they look to hold their lead over CrossFit Krypton. And the Central Beasts, who sit in third, they're way back in the pack. So Mayhem Freedom right now does not need to worry about them, as Team JST Compete really doesn't have to worry about anything other than a major just blowout at this point. A pulled hamstring or running the wrong route. I mean, they could probably stop and sign some autographs if they want, take some pictures with the fans, and they're still going to have a lead.
About the only thing you're worried about at this point in the race is some kind of cramp, something that, you know, maybe your body wasn't prepared for the ruck. You might cramp up, but it doesn't look like that's going to happen with all these teams.
What do you think the likelihood is that they're talking about, hey, we don't need to push it too hard here because we're on the field with everybody we need to beat?
I was going to say, I think we might have just saw that, at least with JST. They're up front. They were grabbing water on their last lap, you know, taking sips of it, sharing it around. I think they know they kind of have the lead or the win for this event secured, almost finished.
They're almost a full minute ahead of Invictus X, who's the only team directly behind them. So they've got some breathing room for sure.
JST Compete. I mean, look how much space is between them and second place Invictus X. This is a lead that JST Compete grabbed on the opening lap, and they have increased it every single trip around this 1,500-meter course. This is the fourth and final lap of this 6,000-meter run, and Christy Aramo looking like she's struggling with that ruck in the back there. I don't know. It looks to me that she has more weight in her pack than Margot Alvarez does.
I would almost bet that's the case. I did a Ragnar relay with Christy Aramo. I ran a very difficult race at the start. She beat me on her last attempt at that race. She had run about 15 miles at that time and still crushed everyone else. She's one of the best runners in the field, hands down.
Yeah, and she had a great result in Run, Swim, Run a couple of years ago when she competed here as an individual. JST Compete.
He's saying nobody's behind us. We can slow down.
Let's just, why don't we take a breather and walk for a little bit here? That's Jack Cornthwaite, who's obviously the biggest guy on that team.
Why are we still running?
They have yet to finish inside the top 10 in this competition. They sit in 13th place overall, but JST Compete is going to lock up their first event win and do themselves a huge favor as they look to stay alive in the competition here. We're going to cut the team field down to 11 at some point. They are on the wrong side of that line right now, but an event win and 100 points will certainly change that for JST Compete. Meanwhile, in second place, it's Invictus X. They are not nearly as safe as JST Compete, although they do have a lead as they keep looking over their shoulders to see where OC3 Black is. And Chrissy Aramo's really struggling with that pack.
But look at the size of her pack, even compared to Sam Dancer's.
Yeah.
It looks like she's taken on at least Sam's and maybe some of Margot's weight as well.
But they are just about done. And behind them, trying to figure out who was in third place. No question who's in first. It's this team, Team JST Compete, who could honestly walk across the finish line at this point. They have that big of a lead. But they're going to make their way back inside the North Park and get themselves across the finish line and put 100 points in their pockets. So Invictus has now moved into third in front of OC3. OC3 is in the red. Invictus, they just left the right side of your screen. Invictus came in fourth place overall. And they're looking to close the gap between them and the Central Beasts. Central Beasts in third place overall. They have a 42-point lead over Invictus for that final spot on the podium. And CrossFit Krypton, they are in second. But things are going to get a little tighter in spots 2 through 5 after this event.
I am interested to see how that part of the race is shaping up right now in this. We've been seeing a lot of the top 2 times. I'm kind of interested to see where Mayhem Freedom, Krypton has kind of shook out. Maybe we might have to wait until they get back into the stadium for that.
Here comes Team JST looking for clarification on where they need to go. Chuck Carswell says, down that way and you'll be done.
Very, very impressive performance from Team JST Compete.
I mean, from the start to finish.
Yeah.
Dominant performance from Jack Hornthwaite, Stephen Fawcett, Elena Collins, and Jane Eady as they pick up the event win and earn 100 points in the process. Here comes Invictus X. They will sit in second place in this event. If they stay here, they'll earn 93 points.
Which will give them a little bit of breathing room, considering they went into this event in 10th place.
Yep.
That was a little too close for comfort. So this second place finish will definitely give them a little bit of breathing room going into the next event.
And I think all 3 of them are going to owe Christy Aramo some post-competition drinks here, because she is doing more than her share of the work. As Invictus X is across the finish line, and they will finish second in the event and earn 93 points. Here comes OC3 Black. They're behind Invictus.
And we were talking about Invictus earlier. They were a team that I said needed to do well,
Right.
but I did not have them pegged to do well. So very impressive third place finish from some bigger teammates.
And this will be 86 points for them. Again, they trailed the Central Beasts by 42 for third place. OC3, they're going to get a top 5 finish. They'll finish 4th. That'll be good for 79 points.
Here comes Mayhem Freedom coming in before
Looks like
Krypton.
they definitely made their move on Krypton.
So Mayhem Freedom, a team that we talked about it earlier. In the opening event, they got faster as it went on. Looks like they did the same thing here, because they were back in the pack, trailing the team that was chasing them in the overall standings. That's CrossFit Krypton, but Mayhem Freedom caught them on the transition at the end of lap number 3, and CrossFit Mayhem Freedom with another top 5 finish.
A couple of teams coming in close to each other.
I think this is Project X,
Project X, yeah.
which means they
Project
also
X
made a
is in.
huge move on Krypton.
They're in 6th. They're across the finish line. Here comes
Krypton.
what appears to be CrossFit Krypton. Vondel
CrossFit
Gym
Vondel
behind
Gym.
them. And they are in. So to recap, it's JST in first, Invictus X in second, and Invictus in third. OC3 Black will take 4th, and Mayhem Freedom right now in 5th place. Teams that have yet to finish: the Central Beasts, Don't Stop, the Exterminators, and Invictus Boston.
Don't Stop coming in.
Don't Stop, they were in 7th place. And a lot of the teams, or at least a couple of the teams that have been chasing them in the overall standings, have already finished. So they need to get across the finish line here, do some damage control, and hope that they did enough to keep themselves inside the top 11.
Right.
Team Don't Stop, they are across the finish line. Stephen Fawcett enjoying some water as his team gets a much needed victory here in event number 4 for the teams. And it's looking like JST Compete is going to avoid the cut. Here come the Exterminators. They were also flirting with the cut line, tied for 8th. And again, some of the teams that were behind them in the overall standings beat them in this event.
Invictus Boston crossing the line. They were sitting in 5th place going in.
And that means that the Central Beasts, the team that came in 3rd place overall, they're going to finish 14th. They're going to earn just 9 points. But again, they were in 3rd place overall. They're going to fall out of that spot, but they probably will not fall out of the top 11.
We're going to get a little mix up on the leaderboard, aren't we, Sean Woodland?
Things are certainly going to change. Mayhem Freedom will remain on top of the overall leaderboard. The question is, who is in 2nd? It could be Invictus. They were in 4th.
In 4th.
They had a 3rd place finish in this event, and they lock up 86 points in the process. But it is likely that Mayhem Freedom's lead actually may have gotten bigger. We'll have to wait till the overall standings shake out.
We talked earlier about OC3 Black needed to make sure they had a good event here, and they definitely did in terms of finishing in front of Don't Stop, as well as Invictus Boston. They're going to make a jump there, probably make some swaps on the leaderboard with those 2 teams.
Yep.
Well, JST Compete got off to a great start, and you look at an event like this and you think, okay, you're going out hot like this, you better be careful, but they knew exactly what they were doing.
They were hot and then only got hotter. I think they increased that final lap. They were a full minute ahead of the next team behind them.
They had incredibly fast transitions. There was no confusion when they walked into the stadium, popped the bags off, knew exactly what they wanted to do, knew who was going to load what weight into what bag, got them back on their back and out onto the next lap as fast as possible.
So besides that big lead in the beginning, which led to their easy transitions, the way which they were able to run that race, keep the lead, let it grow, really impressive.
And there you see Mayhem Freedom being in front of CrossFit Krypton. Somewhere on that last lap, they were able to make a pass, and actually I believe it was the transition. They came in and were able to
come out of North Park ahead of them.
Come out of North Park ahead of Krypton.
With Dave Castro talking things over with Mayhem Freedom. Did not win this event, but finished in the top 5 for the 4th straight time. They won the opening 2 events, took 2nd in event 3, and now a 5th place finish in event 4. They will hang on to the jerseys. The question is now, who will be chasing them in 2nd place? As it looks like the overall leaderboard is going to be shaken up as JST Compete gets the event win and earns 100 points in the process.
You guys were leaps and bounds in front of some of the other teams, even on that very last lap. You clearly are a group of very strong runners. So what was going through your mind this morning when you first heard the announcement on this event?
Yeah, I mean, after yesterday, we were just praying for some running, some long distance running. And then when they announced it, we was confident that we knew we could do well. So the plan was just go out quite hard on the first 2 laps and then just kind of ease it off a little bit to finish off.
That's impressive. I think maybe not a strategy that everyone can keep up with for 4 laps. Speaking of hoping to hear something specific in that announcement, how has it been for you guys so far, not knowing what any of these events are going into the weekend?
Yeah, it's pretty tough. Usually, you know, 1 or 2. But I mean, the unknown's good. It's a little bit different and keeps you on your toes.
Yeah. Well, congratulations, guys. Nice work.
Thank you.
The JST Compete, 26 minutes, 42.61 seconds. They get the event win by nearly a minute over Invictus X, and then it's Invictus They finished in third. OC3 Black will take fourth, and it's Mayhem Freedom with yet another top 5 finish, taking fifth at 28.4054 seconds. So the long, grueling event is now in the books for the teams as we get things situated here. Back inside the Rogue tent here.
Transition.
Yeah. Rogue tent here at Madison, Wisconsin, at the Alliant Energy Center. And what has been a good day so far here as we kick off day number 2 at the 2019 Reebok CrossFit Games, in an event that we have never seen before. We've seen team running with implements. We've seen them run with rescue sleds, and we've seen them run with ropes before. But we've never seen the Ruck pack. As far as your expectations are concerned, how did that match up with them when you saw that event play out?
It turns out there was a little bit more strategy than maybe we had previously thought. You would think by looking at it, hey, you just need to be good at running, get out there and do your thing, but it did come down to how you position yourself on the rope. Did you communicate as a team there? You had teams looking back to see how far behind other teams were behind them, and then we mentioned the transitions, coming in, knowing where your weights are, how to load them, who's going to put what in what bag, and then get out back onto the next lap.
And I really didn't think there was going to be quite so much separation between all of those teams, but really impressive to see JST just take that lead and let it grow.
Yeah, and you mentioned JST, and we've talked about how order of events matters when you're dealing with cuts, because you want your strengths to come out early so you can get a lot of good positioning to avoid that cut. This is exactly what JST needed, because they had to get a top 3 result to keep themselves alive in this competition.
Right, they were 13th going into this event, and so they really, this was a do or die type of event for them, and they put the heat on in this event. It's not super technical. You just got to be willing to suffer. You got to be willing to go. Again, they did really well. They have 3 of their CrossFit Games 2017 members on this team, so they've worked really well together, and you could see it on the rope, on the way they handled their transition. And it should be enough to put them above that 11th spot cut line.
Invictus, a bit of a surprise with their finish. They had one of the results. I don't have the results in front of me, and I forgot already where they finished, but they get a top 5 result. That's going to be huge for them, and I don't think that's what we expected.
No, when you look at their team, or when you look at this event, you think the slowest runner is just going to be as fast as you can possibly go, and not to knock on Sam Dancer, he's a large human, loves to throw the barbell around. But yeah, they finished second place. So Chris Guillermo, both Margot and Holden Ruthwell, all very talented runners. They definitely had a plan here, and impressive that they were able to do as well as they could.
Back in the early days, I remember Greg Glassman used to tell us, show me a guy that can deadlift some really heavy weight, literally this is what he would say, and run fast, and that's a beast. And that is exactly what Sam Dancer
and that goes back to the test
right?
that we saw, at the games in 2009, and then again in 2016 at the Ranch Deadlift Ladder. And Sam Dancer won the Ranch Deadlift Ladder, but finished dead last in the trail run.
Right.
Mayhem Freedom, they do get a top 5 finish, and they're just fine in first place. The leaderboard is going to get shaken up behind them a little bit, but they got to be happy with that result, I think, right?
I'm impressed with the composure that they had over the event, right? They're that team that tends to make a build during an event, right? They tend to go faster each round. We mentioned that, and we definitely saw that here. They didn't start necessarily where we thought they would, or they were in the kind of the back half of the pack with CrossFit Krypton being in front of them, a team that they wanted to keep behind them. But by the last lap, they had a smooth transition, got back out onto the final lap before them, and were able to close the door.
But I think that's actually a good point. It was by the last lap that they had a smooth transition. Their first 2 transitions were really sloppy. There was a lot of bumbling and just not something I would have expected to see from CrossFit Mayhem Freedom. Again, nothing I don't think they should worry about, but just interesting to see.
Yeah, and I think this is only the second time that they've ever competed with these, and I don't know how much they practice with them, but you need to get experience matters. We've seen how good they are when they get to practice with the worm. I guarantee you that some rucksacks are on their way to Cookeville, Tennessee right now.
They've already been ordered.
And they're going to be practicing with that. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to get you set for individual action as the men and the women, they are going to face a ruck run of their own. Stay with us here on the Rogue Iron Game as we continue our coverage of the 2019 Reebok CrossFit Games.